Nelson Mandela's official legacy organization for leadership development, has appointed Judy Vatiswa Sikuza to the post. She takes up the position on the 1st of August 2019, chair of the Board of Trustees of the MRF. Professor Njabulo S. Ndebele said that Sikuza is herself a Mandela Rhodes scholar from the class of 2007. She joins us now in our Cape Town studios. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening, Tsepiso. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
So you are the Deputy Executive Director of the program since 2014. Was this a surprise?
Well, I don't want to say it was a surprise. I mean, I think there was always an intention and an ambition to take on the role of leadership, but I think I obviously had to apply, and it was an open process, which was very nerve-wracking to me, but I'm very glad that I was able to bring forward my passion for the organization and the work that we do as a foundation, and then to be selected to take on the role as CEO.
Having been a fellow yourself, how did that come about? When did you, was it because you aligned it with the former president, his values and his principles, your goals?
Absolutely, Tsepiso. You know, I was studying at the Nelson Mandela University at the time in 2006 and wanted to pursue my postgraduate studies but was not able to afford to do so. And I came across this opportunity on our kind of advertisement at the university and was very much drawn to the values and the principles of what the institution stood for. In particular, what I appreciated about it was that it wasn't just giving you an educational opportunity, but it was actually about saying, how do you bring together the recipients of this prestigious scholarship and through the leadership development program, begin to harness and grow the next generation of leaders for the continent, who I think would then take Mr. Mandela's vision and values and begin to really transform our society for the better.
Just in terms of the leadership qualities that the MRF itself embodies, obviously it's for people who strive for a certain level or quality of leadership. What did you think going in, and has that changed at all in your development?
Well, actually, it's been quite fascinating to be there for the past 13 years because at an essence level, the foundation has 4 key principles that it embodies, and this is what we are put through as the participants in the program. So this is reconciliation, education, entrepreneurship, and leadership. So at an essence level, these principles have followed through in the program throughout. I think what's evolved, obviously, is that over time, the foundation has had to ask itself the question, how does it take in the new generation of young leaders, given the context and the kinds of questions that people are asking? So I think in a way, these principles have become very much alive over the past few years because of the ever-changing nature. You know, I think a majority of students who got the scholarships in the earlier years were kind of late millennials, and now you're coming in with a lot of what we call Gen Z. And, you know, there's a bit of an overlap in terms of the profiles of these generations, but there's also quite some significant differences. So I think to that extent, watching and seeing the evolution of the participants themselves and how they've really tried to take on these principles and make them become more alive in terms of how we actually make them real in society.
So let's marry those two words, right? Evolution and a context. Your appointment, as you said, was a fairly transparent process, but it was a wide process that included looking at international candidates. So what do you think is the difference in that context and how it evolves for somebody to be suitable enough to be the CEO of the Mandela Rhodes Foundation?
Very good question. So I think it's important to understand that we're living in a society that is very, very complex. And by complex, I mean that we are dealing with systemic ramifications of the past, while at the same time we're trying to build new democracies, you know, in the African continent. So I think you want a leader who understands how to manage complexity, build effective relationships with others, as well as understanding the systematic implications of your actions. And a crucial element to that, and I think it speaks to Madiba's vision, was how do we make sure that we build and develop competent leaders who can actually understand the sectors that they work in, ethical leaders who are able to understand the responsibility ascribed to them and that they use it towards public benefit, as well as courageous leaders. And I think it's very hard in this modern day to be a lone voice in a room, in a boardroom where you're making decisions that maybe are not popular for other people. And then equally, I think, be innovative. It's important as we think about the challenges that we face as a society to look at them from a different perspective, from a different lens. And so I think those qualities, are essential to the modern day leader who is meant to drive a new agenda of change on the continent.
And isn't that also the challenge, as you say, being an ethical leadership? If you want success, unfortunately, sometimes it does mean that your back would be against the wall, forcing you to be innovative, but is it going to take you where you would like to be?
No, I think that point about courage comes in, so very, very strongly here. And I think Madiba symbolized courage, right? I think he made a lot of decisions that some people may have disagreed with in the moment, but actually when you look back in hindsight, he had a deeper vision to say, how do we actually build for the future? And part of courage is that we may not get immediate benefits from the decisions we make today, but actually that over time, if we do the right thing, build the right building blocks, and really think about the people at large, then ultimately I think the part of being a leader is having the vision and the collective support of your fellow leaders to help you to, I think, develop into the organization or country or continent that you want to be.
So let's talk about your passions, education, I believe, organizational development. What are you hoping to bring to the role and encourage, including that Pan-African vision that you have?
Exactly. So I think there's really three key opportunities now looking at where the foundation is 16 years later. So I think having the foundation really increase its footprint across the continent is a very crucial passion of mine. Mr. Mandela really wanted this opportunity to benefit as many people across the African continent. So I really want to be able to drive the Pan-African outreach campaign with the team. The second bit, Tsepiso, speaks to our alumni. We now have over 400 alumni in 24 African countries, and they are just doing some of the most incredible work. I think, for example, of Ahmed Sossel from Sudan, who is a linguist by trade and is very passionate about making sure that the languages that are minority in Sudan can be written and recorded. I think there's over about 100 languages in Sudan, and only 70 to 80% of those aren't actually recorded. But so Ahmed Sossel says it's crucial that the minority voices are heard because languages help give us a different perspective. Or, for example, I think about Tumelo Moreri from Botswana, who started Africa Itute, which is an organization trying to create a platform for healing and leadership development for students who are in high school and those who are unemployed. And so what my vision is, how do we now begin to harness the potential of our alumni as a collective and begin to see how they can collaborate across cohorts, across disciplines to really amplify the impact that Madiba had.
Thank you so much.
And lastly, the one element of our work is that, as I had mentioned earlier, we've got these four principles of reconciliation, education, entrepreneurship, and leadership. And how can we as a foundation curate a platform for thought leadership where anyone on the continent who wants to reimagine and hear how to think differently about these topics knows that the Mandela Rhodes Foundation is the place where they can be inspired by new ideas.
And that's a good note to leave it on. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. Congratulations once again. Judy Vatiswa Sikuza is the new CEO of the Nelson Mandela Rhodes Foundation.